Hey guys, Chuck here from Hook Sets and Hangups, and today I'm picking out a new casting reel. The requirements for this reel to fill my arsenal, if you will, is I want a lightweight baitcaster. And by lightweight, I mean I want it to be able to throw very light baits like weightless Cincos and other stuff to use for like a finesse type presentation. Currently I use a spinning reel for all of this stuff, but I really want to try to get a baitcaster that can do this for me. I really like using a baitcaster. I have nothing really against spinning reels, but I would like to rather feel more comfortable using a baitcaster, and it can also serve as double duty down the road for something else if I needed to in a pinch. So these are the two reels that I narrowed it down to when I was searching for my new baitcaster. We have the Curado 70, and this is the HG version, the high gear, 7.2 gear ratio. And this other one is a Daiwa Tatula SV spool, TWS, and this one actually is an 8.1 gear ratio, so it's really fast. This is faster than any reel I've ever tried. I have a couple in the 7.2, or actually I guess I have one reel in the 7 range and one in the 6 range, and this is going to be my third and final baitcaster. So what I was really looking for is something to throw light baits and something I could throw maybe like a fluke with, cast it out with a very lightweight or no weight. So first let me talk about the Curado for just a minute. I don't want to go into in depth here, it's not that kind of review, but I own a Curado 200. This is a Curado 70, so right off the bat I noticed it's much smaller than the 200 that I own. It has the new, I think it's SVS braking system. So it has, my old one, my Curado 200 has 6 brakes. This one just has 4. I really like this reel a lot. It's easy to palm, it's really smooth, and it acts pretty much like my 200. It's just a smaller footprint, and it worked really well for what I was trying to do. The Daiwa, however, this is the first Daiwa reel that I've ever messed with. Okay, I don't know anything about them as far as having held one, how smooth they feel, anything like that. And I was really impressed with this reel. In fact, to make a long story short, this is the reel that I'm going to keep, and I'm going to return the Curado, send it back, because this is the one that I'm going to keep. Now, what I was throwing, just so you can, to test around in my backyard, was this Cinco here. It just has an old hook. I actually found this hook the last time I was out fishing, and this is a Cinco I was using. But anyway, no weight, just like this, tied it up, and was pitching it around my backyard and doing some light casting. And the thing that finally sold me on it was when I hit a tree. And I'll explain what I mean by this. If I was just going for distance and as far as I could pitch and there was no obstacles in the way or anything like that, the Curado was throwing much further than the Daiwa did. And I ended up with 2 brakes on, 2 brakes off. The dial setting is at about 3.5 on the side reel, and the spool tension was a slow drop. But what happened with the Curado that made me change my mind about it was there's a tree in my backyard. It's a willow tree, and so the limbs kind of hang down a little bit, and I practice pitching under those limbs and trying to hit the trunk of the tree. So for the edge of the limbs are hang down to the trunk of the tree is around 8 feet. So I figure it's a good practice to be able to pitch up under there, down into there. So if there's an overhang or something like that, I can, have a lot of practice pitching in. One time I hit the tree with the worm, and this Curado backlashed like crazy, which is kind of to be expected. I had a little bit loose, but I was pitching it kind of far too. It wasn't extremely close. But when the same thing happened with the Daiwa, the backlash was super minimal. Okay, the braking system on this thing is amazing. And I had it set at, I ended up with the side at a 7. It goes from 0 to 20. And then the spool tension was the same as the Curado. This is a slow fall. Now, one thing that I'm just going to mention this real quick because I think it's really awesome, if you can see this. The Daiwa has a different line feed mechanism. I'm not sure what the correct terminology for that is. Most baitcasters you see have this small little hole here that the line feeds through and it winds back and forth. Whereas the Daiwa has this little T-ring, and when you reel, when you cast it, you push the button, the line slides into this wide open thing, and supposedly it lets the line flow more freely out of the when it's spooling off and you're casting. Then when you click the reel, you can see that this pops up and the line drops into this little smaller feed, much like the other one, and it lines it in a much more uniform fashion. This, I'm not sure exactly if this is a gimmick or what. I don't have any scientific proof that this works, but as far as I can tell, it works really well. It casts almost as well. I could pitch a little farther with the Curado with the same settings, but with this reel, I was getting it. I think it's difficult to backlash this reel if you have it set properly. Now, I've seen that on other reviews on the internet. People review this reel, said it's difficult to backlash, but trust me when I say I'm very much an amateur, and I have found it difficult to backlash this reel when it's dialed in. Now, if I turned everything to 0 and turned it down, I'm sure I could backlash it if I really wanted to. But setting it up like that, starting at 10, spool tension, where it's on a slow fall, and casting, this thing was no problem backlashing. And even when I hit the tree, like I said, the backlash was very minimal. It was a few wraps. I think I gave 1 or maybe 2 pulls out and everything was good. Whereas the Curado, I was pulling because it overwound so much. So the braking system on this Tatula is awesome, and I really like it. So my recommendation, and the one I'm going to keep, is this Daiwa Tatula SVTWS. This one is the 103XS series. I guess that's like extra speedy. It's above the HS, the high speeds, the 8.1 to 1. One more thing I want to mention is that I was using 15-pound Seagart and Vizix for this pitching around my backyard and light casting. Now that's normally something that's heavier than something I would normally use, but I had a spool laying around that was just a little bit left on it. So I went ahead and wound it up on one, and then after I chested it out, I immediately wound it back onto the other spool, which is kind of a big no-no too, but I wouldn't normally do it. But just for this, I wasn't worried about losing a fish or anything in my backyard. So just tied it up, and again, the Daiwa Tatula surprised me, impressed me, and next time I'm in the market for a reel, I'll definitely be looking at another Daiwa reel. They are awesome.